us get some insight into her students' project in 6th grade called the Lantern Project that we feel helps to develop career readiness specifically through an engineering project. Drew, as the middle school principal, is going to talk a little bit about how we have a school culture that supports project-based learning, and then I'm going to share some of the planning tools that our teachers use and some resources that have been valuable to us in our project-based learning journey. So a lot of people want to know how we define project-based learning here at the Dayton Regional STEM School, and primarily we use the resources provided by PBL Works, which is formerly known as the Buck Institute for Education. So this definition comes straight from their website, pblworks.org. And there are some keywords in this definition that we really use here at the Dayton Regional STEM School. So in this definition, it says project-based learning is a teaching method in which students gain knowledge and skills by working for an extended period of time to investigate and respond to an authentic, engaging, and complex question, problem, or challenge. So specifically, the verbs investigate and respond are really important to us here at the Dayton Regional STEM School. We want to create students, future leaders and innovators who can respond to all of the complex questions that arise in our world, all of the problems that need to be solved. And so hopefully you'll see a little bit of how that might come about in the project that we're going to be sharing with you today. So for us, that is what project-based learning means. Just to give you a little bit of our background, this is our 11th year of the school. And there are some formative tools that have really helped us develop into who we are. I'm sharing just a few of those resources on the screen with you right now. One of the books that has been a foundational book for us is the book called An Ethic of Excellence by Ron Berger. Ron Berger also works with expeditionary learning schools. If you've ever visited their website, they're a great resource. But An Ethic of Excellence was a book he wrote while he was still teaching, 4th grade, I believe. And it's really about building a culture of craftsmanship, of students who are wanting to produce high quality work. So that has been a foundational book that still all of our teachers who are hired here at the school read as soon as they're hired. When we first began, we looked a lot to the work of High Tech High, which is a network of charter schools out in San Diego, California. They have a lot of resources available on their website, including sample projects from students and teachers. And so early on, we looked to them and looked at how they were using project-based learning. As I said in the previous slide, the Buck Institute for Education, or now known as PBL Works, is one of our ongoing partners in this work, and we really rely heavily on their trainings and publications to support the work that we do with teachers. And most recently, the book Project-Based Teaching, which is published by PBL Works, but written by Susie Boss with John Larmer, who is a PBL Works employee. That book has been instrumental in us just sort of taking our project-based learning to the next level. We used that as a whole staff book study last year. So just some resources if you're interested in learning more about project-based learning. I definitely would go to the PBL Works website and create a login there. They have a lot of free resources available. I'm going to let Drew Sears, who is our middle school principal, join us to explain a little bit about our career pathways and what those look like here at the Dayton Regional STEM School.
Hi.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jen. So, you know, it's been a journey over 11 years. And when we first started, it didn't look this way. And actually, I have to give a lot of credit to Pat, the third presenter, Pat Murakami here, and helping develop these courses and the standards and the scaffolding of these courses to help prepare our kids for high school and beyond in both engineering, IT, and the medical sciences, which are our three high school career pathways. So when our kids in 6th grade come, they come from roughly 30 different school districts in 7 or 8 different counties. And so the 6th grade team in itself has a task of getting everybody on the same page. And Pat, more specifically, has the task of getting everybody moving in the right directions. And her 6th grade class, which is STEM Explorations, this course covers a lot of just computer science and coding. And Pat, you may need to jump in here, but I know that there's some CSS and a couple different coding languages, coupled with some engineering principles. She relies heavily on the engineering design process, and utilizes a lot of engineering design thinking, basically ways of thinking. Once they finish in 6th grade, they move on to digital explorations in 7th grade, a digital design in 8th grade. And then in 7th and 8th grade, they have a half semester as well of engineering design, which again just continues that the process of engineering design and the engineering design process and way of thinking. And this is all scaffolded to push the kids into high school, where in high school they have the option of engineering science in 9th grade, principles of engineering, environmental engineering, digital exploration or digital electronics, physics courses, and then they have an array of computer science courses as well, like networking and programming and cybersecurity and network security. And so these 4 courses essentially that the kids are taking in middle school are not just integrated into the projects that are taking place in the middle school, but they're also designed to help support the kids for when they get into high school and can more specifically kind of choose a pathway and preparing for career in college. So I don't know, Pat, if you have something to add to that, since you were so integral in designing that, by all means, feel free. Or if you want to explain your course a little bit as well, that's.
Sure, you did a great job. In STEM Explorations, like Drew said, we just have the students come in for half the year. They learn IT, they're coding in HTML5 and CSS, a little bit of Python, and then the other half of the year, they're learning the engineering design process through projects. They continue on with a full year in 7th and 8th grade with that IT, and then a half year of engineering in 6th grade. And along with those, though, we are bringing in the ISTE standards, which are unifying the 21st century skills in with IT, and I use it with the engineering. We also follow the CTE standards from the state of Ohio. So yeah. It's a great class.
It really is.
It is a great class. Thank you, Drew and Pat. So with that, I'd like to let Pat talk to us a little bit about a specific project that happens in her STEM Explorations class that is called the Lantern Project. And Pat is going to talk a little bit about that project, give you some insights into it, and specifically look at how it helps to develop our students' career readiness skills. So Pat, if you want to go ahead and explain the Lantern Project to us.
Sure, thanks, Jen. So the Lantern Project is something that's pretty new to our 6th grade. We found it, I believe, through by out there, and then we went to another school, and the math teacher was doing this project, and we were like, this is really cool. We can do this, but we can change these things. And so we have it so that it's integrated through all of the teachers in the 6th grade, which is really nice. We start off with our driving question, like you do with everything, and how can we create a lantern that reflects our school culture to share with our community? Our 6th graders come in at the end of the school year for exhibition night. Twice a year we have exhibition where students get to showcase their work, which is really fun and exciting. And so the first year that we did this project 2 years ago, my room had all the lanterns that the students 3D printed, their final ones, hanging in my room, and the lights were for the lanterns were on, and then the lights were off, and they could walk through and see the lanterns. The lanterns turned out to answer that question of reflecting our culture, because the designs within them, the shapes that were within them, reflected the culture of how we think, how we interact, and how we learn. So we follow the engineering design process, given a question, and we look at our criteria and constraints and do some research. We sketch up some ideas, and I have, in the past, I've had them do that on graph paper, and then we move into Tinkercad. Tinkercad is a very basic CAD system, and then in 8th grade or 9th grade, they move into Inventor. These are all CAD systems that are used in industry. We actually just met with a woman that does new collar workforce, and she does digital badging for this, so that people can get these skills and then go out and get a job without getting a college education. It's about a 6-week program, or they can go and get a college education. So these are skills that the students are learning within 6th grade, obviously just starting with these skills. Tinkercad is a very basic system, but it can become more complex. And I will say that to get the digital badges that this program, the Fab Lab, uses, they actually use Tinkercad. So it's a really great software. It's free. So we always like that open source. So the students go through a process of creating and designing. They get a lot of feedback from each other, which we think is a great skill for them to learn. We teach them how to give feedback that is appropriate, that's kind, that's helpful, that's specific. And it's really interesting because students love getting the feedback, and you would think they would be like, oh, that's just not, I don't really care. But they really buy into this. And that is part of our culture of redesigning, of reworking, and rethinking. One of the things that industry has said to us over and over again is that they want problem solvers. And so by going through this engineering design process, we're teaching them how to problem solve. I use computational thinking with them, so that kind of kicks in with all of that, helping them identify those 4 sections of it and thinking through that. The students, as they're going through, they're learning all these things. So their first sketch that is done on graph paper is not what their final sketch a lot of times looks like. Sometimes it does, but not always. Because they're learning how, they're just designing this as they're learning about geometric shapes in math, and they're learning about how light is reflected and refracted, going through the different types of 3D filament or paper or whatever it is that they're learning about. So it's revised based on what they've learned. So they're constantly changing and have to stay on top of what they're thinking about. They share their ideas with each other, and through Tinkercad, which is great, you can actually set up your classroom, and then I can see all of their work, which is fabulous. And they can actually share with each other. They work with a partner. So in the end, they revise it, and then they share their design with our community and with our incoming 6th graders, so that they can see what it's like at our school, just to kind of get a taste, to see that technology, but also to see who we are. At the very end, after it's all over, our students reflect. We go through a process of answering questions and thinking about different things through the project. So they have to, and this is a big part of PBL, they have to really reflect on how they learned and what they learned. They're looking at what went well in writing about it and stating specific evidence. They're looking at what didn't go so well and how they fixed that, and possibly the feedback that someone gave them for it. They're looking at a couple of different things to help them think through the process, trying to help them be metacognitive. So that's kind of the project. The skills that the students learn is obviously the CAD software, the engineering design process. We teach them how to write professional emails. We have people coming from the Grill. It's one of the AFRLs at the Air Force base here. And so we have experts come in. So we have to teach them how to write a professional email and talk to a teacher or to us or even to each other. We want it to be in a situation just as if they were in a job so that they can understand how to have an appropriate conversation. They give and receive the feedback using the 6 hats based off of De Bono's 6 hats, and then also what Ron Berger does with his critique sessions, which is amazing. 21st century skills are a lot of our 5 qualities that we have in our school, and then a few extras. So we're looking for students to be able to collaborate, to be able to use a common language, to have a conversation so that they can talk to each other. It's about building each other up. It's not really a competition. It's about saying, oh, you know how to do this? Can you come over and look at mine and give me some feedback? And then they work through the process. It's also inquiry, which is great because they need to investigate this and then reach out to each other and reach out to me. Another thing is time management. I have the students with a goal sheet every day. They set their goal based on what we're working on. But it's an individual goal. And then at the end of class, they check and they write down whether they met the goal or not. And if they did not meet the goal, they're just writing down, okay, this is what I need to focus on tomorrow when I come in. Or I'm going to come in during lunch or before, after school or whatever. And this is just going to keep me on task. This is what I know I need to do so that I can stay focused. I provide a board that's up in my room that has all the documentation that they use, rubrics, any feedback forms, anything that they're doing is all up on the board along with the engineering design process. So they have a place that they can see what's going on, a person that they can talk to within the classroom, and then of course talking to me. I think one of the biggest things is their flexibility and being able to solve a problem. So we're really looking for critical thinkers so that they can go into the world that they're now in and come up with solutions that have never been solved before, which is a tall order for 6th grade, but we're working on it.
Thank you so much, Pat. Pat, I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but Jerry asked if we know whether there's an integration with Tinkercad and Google Classroom. I told him we were a Microsoft school, but I would still ask if you know if there's a link in Google Classroom to bring Tinkercad in. Or are you aware of that or not?
I'm almost positive there is.
Yeah.
So because we're not a Google school, but I have talked to other teachers, and I'm almost positive.
Yeah, so I would definitely look into that, Jerry. I Googled it myself really quickly, and it looks like there may be some guests or some connections there. Thank you for your question, Jerry. And thanks, Pat, for explaining the significance of the Lantern Project here at our school.
Sure.
It really is a pretty incredible project that brings together so many important elements, not just for our school culture and sharing it with an authentic audience, our incoming 6th graders, since we start at 6th grade through 12th grade. Those incoming 6th graders really get welcomed into our culture with those lanterns. But also really so much actual, as Pat mentioned, useful future career readiness skills, Tinkercad and all of those 21st century skills. So I'm going to let Drew talk a bit about our school culture and how that is really instrumental to our success in project-based learning. So we sort of thought of 2 questions that I'm going to let Drew kind of address the answers to from his perspective. And the first one is, how do administrators support teachers in implementing project-based learning well? And then the second question is, how do administrators and teachers support students in participating in project-based learning and developing career-ready skills? So Drew, can you speak to those questions a little bit?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And like when I spoke previously, by all means, feel free to jump in and help with these questions as well. As Jen started out the presentation, all of our teachers, when they're hired on, are asked to read a couple books to help get them going in project-based learning. As well, we have a lot of really great teachers, and from an administrator's perspective, that's key. They're excellent, and they are passionate, and they're driven, and it's easy to hand over the keys and let them do what they do best. Jen Reed, I'm not sure if she mentioned, she is our project coach. What is your official title, Jen? You're on mute.
She's our PBL coach and training center coordinator.
And she works closely with all the teachers and with admin. We have project tuning protocols as a staff, both middle school and high school, where teaching teams come and they actually present their projects, and there's a whole process where they can get feedback and critique. So in a sense, we practice what we preach from the admin down. There's a heavy focus on teams and allowing planning time to make project-based learning work really well. It takes a lot of time to plan and a lot of dedication. As far as our core qualities, we rely heavily both with the staff and students in practicing what we preach, and collaboration and communication and persistence and creativity, and all of these things from the top down have to be present and constantly practiced. So it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun as well, and it's a lot of saying yes when there's creative, kind of out of the box thinking and ideas, and just trusting that in most cases and through project-based learning, I believe that the standards can not just be covered, but be covered more thoroughly and in depth in a deeper way. So from my perspective, I love my job. It's fun, it's exciting, and I get to work closely with the teachers through all this as well, which is something I thoroughly enjoy. Teachers and students, really. So it's in my perspective, it's a lot of fun. So I don't know if you two want to kind of chime in on that first question as well.
For me, the key to doing PBL is that administrative support. We're provided time twice a week. Instead of having advisory, we meet as a team and discuss what is going on with projects. And it's really nice. We meet outside of those times, of course, but I think it's really nice to know that we're always supported with that. Our administrators also provide us with some Plan E days where the students are learning electronically, and we're meeting as a team to discuss things. So I think the biggest thing that administrators do for us is they allow us to fail, because we'll go to them and ask about something and talk about it for a project, and they're like, try it. What the heck? Sounds great. Go for it. What do you need help with? How can I support you? And I think those are just the biggest things. It allows us to take those risks, and then it allows our students to take risks, which is part of being in the workforce and understanding that thinking.
Yeah, I would just echo everything that Drew and Pat just said. I feel like, time is always the biggest need for teachers. Time to plan, time to get feedback from each other, time to do things differently with students. And our administrators are really great at trying to remove as many barriers as possible to allowing us to do projects that are rigorous and maybe a little bit out of the box with students. So that support just means everything. So as Pat said, I think, especially in the few recent years, really trying to find time for us by adding these Plan E days, or what we call them, electronic days. Obviously, That is in our new culture, our new way of going to school. Students are going to be learning online maybe a little bit more, but in our past, that's been something that maybe like it's almost once a month, though not as often in the winter months. Once a month on our school calendar at the beginning of the year that is approved by our board. The parents will see a Plan E day like on a Friday. And so students stay home and do lessons through our LMS, some of them live with teachers there, but some of them asynchronously through our LMS. And that allows our teachers to have basically a whole day of planning time where they're able to meet with their colleagues and plan these integrated cross-curricular projects that are so meaningful for our students, like the Lantern Project. So again, finding time to support the teachers and allowing our teachers to take those risks is really, really integral. Drew, I'm wondering if you would talk briefly about what you do as an administrator to support our students in participating with project-based learning and developing those career readiness skills. Like, what's the role of an administrator in supporting the students through this work?
Yeah, well, in terms, I think one of the biggest things we've done we're in the process of doing as a district is that we are, project-based learning allows for implementation of career-ready skills or professional competencies, and, to integrate that and actually practice those skills along with the content and standards that are being covered in that project. And so it's been a journey over the last 2 years. But what we've done is we've kind of we started with a long list of all of the professional competencies that we cover in our projects or that we value as a staff for our students. We've kind of categorized those, and we've been able to identify where those covered in the projects. And what we're in the process of doing now is scaffolding those skills in grades 6 through 12. In the same way you would content standards, and that to make sure that we're closing any gaps and that we're covering all those critical skills, professional competencies that we as a school feel are important. And so that's a bit of planning and a lot of meeting times and discussions about how we're covering those and how we're scaffolding those, and we're close. I think by the end of this year we'll have it on paper and be able to share that with incoming staff and have that ready to go. But as far as a school and administration, everything from our college and career fair, I think, and that we have once a year where we have 40 to 50 different colleges and careers in here, and the skills are scaffolded from 6 through 12. So in 6th grade, their goal is really just to learn how to shake hands and have a couple professional questions to ask and take some professional notes and carry on a professional conversation, and in some cases just be able to introduce themselves in a professional manner. And then that's kind of scaffolded all the way up into sophomore, junior, senior year in high school, where the kids are actually looking for job shadows and internships and exploring career and college options through that career fair. And so much of it is just integrated into the projects. From my perspective, that's part of what I love about being involved in these projects, whether I'm a judge or I'm offering some critique and feedback to kids in different groups. From my perspective, I love that, and just being involved with the kids and helping reinforce those and allowing the kids to practice those career skills, professional competencies.
Thank you, Drew.
Yep.
So I want to just share a planning tool that we often use here as teachers. It's just a really basic entry into thinking about project-based learning. And I'm going to show you how the Lantern project kind of fits into this project planning matrix. This is a tool that we've been using since the school started. And it really just starts to get us thinking as teachers about what our project might end up looking like. So I'm going to show you what this matrix looks like very briefly for the Lantern project that Pat just spoke about. So Pat shared that she had a driving question for this project with the students, and the driving question is written in the language of the students. So how can we create a lantern that reflects our school culture to share with the community? That's the driving question that is introduced to students at the very beginning of the project. depending on the kind of teacher you are, if you're like me, the driving question is actually like the last thing that I come to because I'm a language arts teacher by training, and so words matter to me. So I may have a draft of my driving question to begin with, but it really doesn't get finalized until sometimes the night before the project starts, is when I really get satisfied with my wording. I usually end up starting with the final product and the standards or activities that are going to be a part of the project. So, for example, Pat talked about some of the important elements that she was going to cover in this project are things like the engineering design process and professional emails and giving and receiving feedback and those 21st century skills. And the students were going to learn how to use CAD software. Those were specifically the engineering design process and the ISTE standards. Those were really important standards that she wanted to cover in this project. So as teachers, we ask ourselves, okay, if this is the content that I need to cover, then what is a final product that I could use, that I could have my students create that would help demonstrate that they're understanding these standards really well. And so for this project, it's designing these lanterns. And the reason they design lanterns is that at this time in social studies, they are looking at world religions. And so they end up looking at what light and other symbols mean to world religions. And so that's how they landed on this idea of lanterns. There's also science class, they're studying light, as she mentioned, and different properties of light. In language arts class, they're reading a book called City of Ember, and light is an important symbol in that novel. And so that final product was sort of decided on, chosen because of the symbolism of lanterns in general. And so that final product is determined based on the standards that the teachers are trying to meet. And based on that final product, that's where you get the driving question and you get some of the partners or the experts in the public audience that the teachers want to bring into the project. So I know we had a question about whether we have a lesson plan introducing the Lantern Project. I mean, to me, a lesson plan covers a day in class, and this project, Pat, I believe is almost a quarter-long project for your class, right? I mean, really spending a lot of time because of the training that the students need with CAD and all of the different drafts that they go through in their project. And math, they're learning all about 3D shapes and how to calculate surface area and volume. And so, you know, this is a really intricate, in-depth project that takes a lot of time, but as Drew mentioned, covers so many of these standards in a lot of depth. And so I would say this matrix here, as I said, is a really good first step in terms of planning the idea for a project. And then after a team or a teacher is really settled with this overall idea, they can start breaking down the different skills and the standards and scaffold those so that over time the students are having the opportunity to do those multiple drafts and go in depth with some of the content. And I know the 6th grade teachers spend a lot of time working on the calendar and the timing of all of this so that when they're getting those lessons right when they're ready for those lessons to be involved. So I just wanted to share this planning matrix as something that you can take and use yourself in your classroom, or if you're an administrator or a curriculum person, you can share with your teachers as a good entry point into project-based learning planning. We also have, as a training center, opportunities for events that we host here at the school, although this year, due to COVID, we're not going to be able to do probably as many on-site visits as we would have previously done. In the past, we do day-long visits where you can come spend time in Pat's classroom during the Lantern Project and see the kids in action and see how she's introducing this. This year, we're going to have to do things a little bit differently, probably with some asynchronous trainings, but I do want to mention that we will begin updating our website for the training center soon with what those events are going to look like. So definitely stay tuned and stay in touch with each of us. I want to make sure we are leaving time here for any questions. And if you don't have questions, I can just let Pat or Drew elaborate on any of the previous slides that you might want us to go a little bit more in depth upon. So thank you everyone for attending, and definitely use the meeting chat if you would, if you have any questions to ask us about how we use project-based learning or career readiness at the STEM school.
Jen, the teacher who asked about the Lantern project fact sheet, we do have the project glimpse that like explains the project. But we introduce the Lantern project through a day of culture where students bring in something about their culture, and a lot of times it's food because that's always so good. But we sit with small groups and we share our culture and talk about that to kind of kick off the whole project.
Thanks. I will see if I can bring up that project glimpse and link it. I think that somebody asked if we can email the slide presentation. I think that you may have access to it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kayla. There's a way.
All presentation slides will be available on the Career Connections landing page for the conference, and I can put that in the chat box here so that you guys have a direct link of where the slides will be provided.
Right, you should be able to have access to those slides, and I think also that project planning matrix is a separate download as a PDF so that you can use that if you'd like. Any other questions? I have really good wait time, so feel free to take your time. I just found the project glimpse that Pat just referred to about the Lantern project that just kind of explains how each of the classes play into that project, and it has a few more images of lanterns and students doing work. So I just posted that in the chat. It's a Google Doc. So just to let everyone know.
This is Jerry. I have a quick question.
Yeah.
These programs are geared towards middle school. We have an internship. I work for a nonprofit, and so we have internships where we match up our interns with companies and teachers and what have you. I guess my question would be, now that we are at the COVID-19, it just looks like everything's going to be virtual for the most part for most of the school districts, and or for the, how do we say, just the lesson plans and everything. So from the principal standpoint, Mr. Andrew, how are you doing?
All right, I'm doing the same thing. I'm kind of on this webinar invisibly.
So Jerry, was your question about how we're going about doing doing projects?
Yes.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's a challenge, and we've allowed some. We juggled our calendar around a little bit, and our teachers came in July, mid-July, with some help from Jen facilitating some of this, and trying our best to get these projects online. And hopefully sooner and later we'll be back in person. But we are, as a district, we are starting school essentially 100% virtual. So yeah, it's a challenge. But in some cases, like I know Pat came in last spring when we moved online when COVID first started, and she actually printed out some of the students' works on our 3D printers. And Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you mailed them home to the students.
I have not mailed them home. I do have them, so to give to the students. I'm not sure how, in some kind of Ziploc bag or something. I'm not sure, but I do have them for them. Yes.
Yeah,
and do it online. It was just more of a condensed version.
Yeah, and it's really put us so much of trying to do projects and breaking out into small groups and allowing for a lot of this to still continue. It's put a large burden on our IT team. I was just reading over a survey today of all the different hardware and software that our teachers are requesting to be able to utilize throughout this year, assuming that we will be virtual at least for part, if not all of the school year at this point. So I don't have any great answers for you. We're figuring that out as we go, kind of. And I don't know if Pat or Jen, if you have talked to other teachers or you yourselves have some plans on how that's happening.
I can speak to that because I've been talking quite regularly with teachers. And the good news is PBL, project-based learning, can be done and has been done during virtual learning all over the country. It can work. It's obviously a little bit more challenging, and even if we were all here in person with social distancing in place, things would still have to look a little bit differently because so many of our projects happen in small groups. And that won't necessarily change, although some teachers may decide to see if there's a way to make a project something that students can do individually, or maybe there's a choice for the students to be in a group or do it individually, just based on not wanting to put another extra burden on kids who are already going to have a lot of different stressors in their lives during this time. I do want to share that, like I said, PBL Works is one of our really important partners, and if you go and register at their website, and I don't work for them or anything, I just know that I've done all their trainings and they just have a lot of really great resources. They actually have a specific website dedicated to project-based learning for remote learning. And so if you just go to their website, you will see the link to get to that microsite of theirs. And they go over projects that are easy to adapt for online learning. And those projects all have digital final products or a choice of digital final products. A lot of teachers, like Drew said, are looking at using a lot of different tools for students to share their work. So things like Flipgrid, which is free and integrates with Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams. So students can even do virtual presentations just if they have access to a camera, like on a phone, they can record themselves doing a digital presentation and share that. And you can share those links with experts to give the students feedback on their ideas. So there are actually a lot of ways that students can do projects virtually. One of the things we talked about as a staff is really trying to make sure that our projects are authentic and meaningful to the students themselves, because student motivation, we all anticipate, is going to be an issue as long as we are interacting virtually. And given all of the stressors that we know were a part of student learning in the spring, we had the most success when we gave our students projects that they felt like they could connect to personally, and that they had a lot of voice and choice in how they demonstrated their knowledge and their learning. That seemed to really empower the students, and because they felt like it was really relevant to them and who they were, they found a lot of success and motivation when they felt like they could have some choice over how they showed their learning. So that's something that I would really recommend. But we will definitely keep in touch with us. Our email addresses are up on the screen right now if you have additional questions. Like I said, we'll start updating our training center website to share work that we're doing or opportunities to learn from our students and our teachers about the work that they're doing. Thanks for that question.
Yeah, thank you.
And I just wanted to, as we are closing up, thank everyone for being a part of this session. And I put a link in the chat box that is the Career Connections events and training resources, which links directly to where all of the presentations and recordings will be housed for the entire month summer series, including this session. And there's also a place to add feedback. Feedback is absolutely essential so that we know, so that our presenters can get feedback and supporting and any other questions or additional information that you're needing, as well as us as the host of the event to know, what was valuable, what we can do better. So please do use that link to not only get your resources, but provide your feedback as well. And I also did put a link for the pblworks.org in there too, so that you guys have access to that.
Great.
If we don't have any other questions, and presenters, if there isn't anything else that you would like to share with the group, we can close out today's session. And thank you all, and certainly you do have access and contact to everyone who presented today, including myself if needed. But I will allow everyone to have a little bit of time and transition to their next session. And thank you today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.